पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ईशावास्यमिदगुं सर्वं यत्किञ्च जगत्यां जगत् तेन त्यक्तेन भुञ्जीथा मा गृध्ः कस्य स्विद्धनम्। ॐ कुर्वन्नेवेह कर्माणि जिजीविषेच्छतगुं समाः एवं त्वयि नान्यथेतोऽस्ति न कर्म लिप्यते नरे। असूर्यानामते लोका अन्धेन तमसा वृताः तागस्ते प्रीत्याभिगच्छन्ति ये केचात्मनो जनाः। ॐ अनेजदेकं मनसो जवीयो नैनद्देवा आप्नुवन् पूर्वमर्षत् तद्धावतो ज्ञानत्येति तिष्ठत्तस्मिन्नपो मातरिश्वा दधाति। ॐ तदेजति तन्नैजति तद्दूरे तद्वान्तिके तदन्तरस्य सर्वस्य तदु सर्वस्यास्य बाह्यतः। ॐ यस्तु सर्वाणि भूतान्यात्मन्येवानुपश्यति सर्वभूतेषु चात्मानं ततो न विजुगुप्सते। ॐ यस्मिन् सर्वाणि भूतान्यात्मैवाभूद्विजानतः तत्र को मोहः कः शोक एकत्वमनुपश्यतः। ॐ सपर्यगाच्छुक्रमकायमव्रणमस्नाविरगुं शुद्धमपापविद्धम् कविर्मनीषी परिभूः स्वयं भूर्याथा तथ्यतोऽर्थान् व्यदधाच्छाश्वतीभ्यः समाभ्यः। अन्धन्तमः प्रविशन्ति ये विद्यामुपासते ततो भूय इव ते तमोय विद्याया गुंरताः। अन्यदेवाहुर्विद्ययान्यदाहुरविद्यया इति शुश्रुमधीराणान्येनस्तद्विचक्षिरे विद्याञ्च विद्याञ्च यस्तद्वेदोभयगुंसः अविद्यया मृत्युं त्यक्त्वा विद्ययामृतमश्नुते। अन्धन्तमः प्रविशन्ति ये सम्भूतिमुपासते ततो भूय इव ते तमोय सम्भूत्यागुंरताः। अन्यदेवाहुः सम्भवादन्यदाहुरसम्भवात् इति शुश्रुमधीराणान्येनस्तद्विचक्षिरे सम्भूतिं च विनाशं च यस्तद्विदो भयगुंसः विनाशेन मृत्युं तीर्त्वा सम्भूत्यामृतमश्नुते। ॐ हिरण्मयेन पात्रेण सत्यस्यापिहितं मुखम् तत्त्वं पूषन्न पावृणु सत्यधर्माय दिष्टये। ॐ पूषन्नेकर्षेयमसूर्यप्रजापत्यव्यूहरश्मीन् समूहतेजो यत्ते रूपं कल्याणतमन्तत्ते पश्यामि। योऽसावसौ पुरुषः सोऽहमस्मि। ॐ वायुरनिलममृतमथेदं भस्मान्तगुं शरीरम्। ॐ क्रतो स्मर कृतज्ञ स्मर क्रतो स्मर कृतज्ञ स्मर। ॐ अग्नेनय सुपथाराये अस्मान् विश्वानि देववयुनानि विद्वान् युयोध्यस्मज्जुहुराणमेनो भूयिष्ठान्ते नम उक्तिं विधेम। पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः
So we're just going to be studying today about Brahman, because Brahman is the basic search of the Upanishadic rishis. Ki what is Brahman? Who is Brahman? And how is he become the universe? In fact, regarding Brahman and the becoming of the universe, the Gita there is barely one verse in which Sri Krishna says that I have expanded myself and become the universe. But there is no explanation as to how he became the universe. But Sri Aurobindo has given in detail through Life Divine in a few chapters the entire process which he calls involution, right? So of course, we're not going to be doing that while we're doing Isha Upanishad, but just wanted to let you know the detail in which Sri Aurobindo has explained all this in the Life Divine. And what we are going to do today is basically Brahman, Satchidanand, oneness, multiplicity, and what is the purpose for Brahman to have become this universe? What was his ultimate purpose? Once Nirod Baran, one of Sri Aurobindo's closest disciples, asked Sri Aurobindo, he said, is everything Brahman, Sri Aurobindo? So Sri Aurobindo replied, candidly as he always did, yes, Nirod, when you ask this question, it is Brahman asking Brahman. And when I reply to you, it is Brahman replying to Brahman. That is the expanse of Brahman. There is only Brahman. There is none other than Brahman. Right? So, you see, the Lord and the world, they seem to be distinct. They seem to be very different from each other. But actually, both are Brahman. Right? The divine is Brahman and he has become the universe. So it is the divine here that we actually experience in ourselves, in each other, and in everything. To be able to understand verses 6 and 7, it was important to go through this little repetition that we are going to be doing today. All right. So God is the one stable and eternal reality. He is one because there is nothing else. Since all existence and non-existence are He, right? Brahman has become the cosmos, as we said. And even though He has become, He remains unchanged. This cosmos is not chaotic. We have talked about this in our past talks. It is governed by a law. We talk about all the planets, they're going around in their own axis, never moving from their axis because they're all governed by a law. And the same law is functional within our being. When we look at ourselves, we talked about the nucleus and the electrons, protons, all moving around the nucleus, but not in a haphazard manner. They're all being governed by a law and they're moving in a very orderly fashion. Even we're going to talk about it later, even an anthill. If you look inside the anthill, there is unbelievable order. There is unbelievable organization. This cosmos is not chaotic. It is being governed by a law. And Brahman, what is Brahman doing? Since Brahman has become all this, Brahman is doing the play within itself. He has become the container, as we said, from Sri Aurobindo's writings, we learned that he had taken from the Upanishads, that who has become the container, who has become the space? Vishnu has become the space. And who has become the time? Shiva has become the time, right? Brahman has become the container and he is the one who is contained within the container, right? Sri Aurobindo says, and I'm quoting, he possesses eternally in himself all that is. He possesses eternally in himself all that is, has been, or ever can be. And he, therefore, does not increase or diminish. He neither increases nor diminishes because all that is him. And it doesn't increase, it doesn't diminish, and yet it cannot be given a number. We can't say he is this much because much will say a number. There is no number to him. Just as Brahman holds all space within himself always, similarly, all three time states, all the three, past, present, and future, are held within Brahman at the same time. So we can't say past ho chuka or future hone wala hai. In our limited access to time, we feel that I'm in the present, past ho chuka hai, and future hone wala hai. But actually, all the three time states are all present together. And that is why the Trikaldarshi Rishi can anytime move into the past and anytime move into the future. If they were not all present together, this was not possible, right? So all the three time states too exist simultaneously in Brahman, right? Now let's talk of laws of relativity. So the laws of cause and effect, who do they apply to? The laws of cause and effect apply to the cosmos. They apply to the becoming. We are the becomings. So we say this happened, so this is happening. So because there are laws and they apply to the becoming, but these laws do not apply to Brahman, right? The world, yes, they apply to the changeable and the perishable, but they do not apply to Brahman himself, who has become the changeable and perishable.
The perishable.
Yes, yes. And the world, what is this world? This world is a cyclic movement. It's called samsara. It is a cyclic movement of the divine consciousness in space and time. It is cyclical. Now, what is the word samsara? It's made of what? Samsara is made of the word some, even in English you say some of this and this. And in Sanskrit, some means together. And Sara, we always say iska sar ye hai, but it comes from Shri Dhatu, Sri. Sri is movement or flow. So, Sansara means the flowing together or moving together of the total manifestation. The divine expanded himself and he became this manifestation. Now, this manifestation is not stable. We are growing from childhood to youth to adulthood, and then we perish. This moving together of all of us together is called samsara, right? It comes from Sara comes from the Sri Dhatu, like the word Sarita, right? Also comes from the same Dhatu, Sri, to flow. Now, what is Srishti and Pralay? Srishti and Pralay are again a cyclic movement. As we said, this whole world is a cyclic movement. Its laws and its objects are always basically progression. Cyclical will always be a progression upwards or downwards, but it's a progression. It exists by movement and it would be dissolved by a cessation of movement. Right? Pralay usi ko to kehte hain na. Pralay could be understood through the example of a spider. What does the spider do? It makes a web out of itself, and when it wants to pull back, it pulls the web back inside itself. It doesn't make it like a bird makes its nest. She has to use outside material to make the nest. But the spider makes the web, creates a web from outside himself, from inside himself, and pulls it back inside himself whenever he wants to. Pralay would only mean then that whenever Brahman would want to pull back the manifestation, he just pulls himself back into himself. Like a tortoise pulls himself back inside himself. But the Upanishads give the example of a spider. They give the example, Mundaka Upanishad gives the example of a spider. If I had my Jaipuria school students, they would have recited the verse, which tells us this, but I am not a Jaipuria product. See, another example for this is that just like the stage on which the dancer is dancing, that stage is made for an event, right? And after the dance is over, the stage is dismantled. Similarly, the stability that supports this phenomenal world is pulled back when pralay happens. But one good news is, as I told you all earlier, the mother of Sri Aurobindo Ashram has clearly said that henceforth there will be no more pralays or cessation of this cosmos, right? An important point to note is that the basis of this movement, this whole that we're saying, the progression and the coming down, the cyclical movement, all this is not a material movement, is not a movement of the material as was explained by Charles Darwin. He said physical आया, फिर उसमें से vital आया, फिर. It is actually a movement of consciousness. Consciousness rises to a higher level, and when consciousness rises to a higher level, it pulls the physical up into a higher form, a higher grade of consciousness. But actually, the upgradation is first of the consciousness. And because the consciousness has risen, so it's able to pull the matter to the vital or the prana. And then again, there is a rise of consciousness. And because of the rise of consciousness, the prana moves up to the mental. And from the mental to the psychic to the spiritual. It's always an upgradation of consciousness first, which moves the matter upwards. Right? All these things need to be processed within ourselves. But yeah.
Is the consciousness really evolving and improving?
Absolutely, the consciousness is evolving.
It doesn't seem to be like that.
If there were Rakshasas earlier, I know you'll say that even now there are Rakshasas of a different form.
More Rakshasas
But-
than there were.
No, we don't know how many Rakshasas there.
Rakshasas like now was more educated and more sensible.
No, Kirit uncle answered this question very, very clearly in his talk because somebody had asked exactly the same question. And he said very clearly that evolution is happening and it's happening at a good pace. Sometimes it goes slower, but it's happening evolution. And we are moving towards a better humanity. It may not seem so, doesn't seem so seeing the situation of the world, but actually there is evolution happening. How many people were, I mean, we have to forget about the rishis of the Vedic period. That was a few people were rishis, but most of them were not at that level. There were just a few rishis. So what we are seeing now is we are seeing more and more people who are moving towards spirituality, who are searching. There is a search. That search was not there in so many people at large earlier. We may seem like we are moving downwards, but we are actually all evolving. That's a good news.
From a layman's point of view, the way people are going, तो लगता नहीं है कि राक्षस की तरफ ही हो रहे हैं. I mean, the sort of गुस्सा जो लोगों में है, छोटी छोटी बात पे. There are people who are also spiritually inclined. There's so many around you who are ready to attack with very little thing. I think the world is becoming very volatile.
Very true. The world is becoming very volatile. There's no doubt about it. But there is an equally large number of people who are turning towards the spirit, which was not there. If you look at your own lifetime and you look at your parents' lifetime, you won't find so many spiritual organizations, so many spiritual gurus, so many people who are also trying to give answers to the questions of people who had these queries, spiritual quest, spiritual seeking. All that is also increasing. You can see an increase in both. Both are increasing.
हम तुम्हारे अंदर spiritually तो हैं.
हाँ.
They are spiritually.
So many.
So many.
So many. And earlier I would think कि नहीं, they are not giving the right or they are not. But right and wrong की बात नहीं है. Wherever the whole gentry is, at that level, they need somebody. So you may need a guru at that level, you may need a teacher at that level, you may need a teacher at that level. So at all levels, you have teachers. And each one is only trying to do the good. Whatever else may be mixed in it, there may be mixtures in what they're seeking is. But they are giving some good in some manner, right?
Parents and my grandparents. My parents are not very educated. My grandmother was not educated, but I feel they were so inherently spiritual.
Sumanji.
They were so inherently spiritual. I think कि वो जो भी बात बोलते थे आज भी याद आती है. अच्छा मम्मी ये कहते थे. अच्छा कोई ये कहता था. कितनी मतलब आप ये हम सब बातें सुनते हैं ना तो हमको उन बातों में मतलब नजर आता है कि कितनी छोटी छोटी बातें थी उस टाइम हम समझते नहीं थे. लेकिन आज because of these discourses, because of this whatever quest we are going through, we understand कि कितना मीनिंग हम जैसे वैसे जी वाहिगुरु दा नाम लो कोई गल नहीं सब ठीक होएगा. क्यों वाहिगुरु दा नाम लो? You are inviting him.
Yeah.
है ना?
Yeah.
You are inviting him. कितने भी बैठना है, ऐसी जाना है, wherever we have to, for instance, even if you are traveling, वाहिगुरु सच्चे पातशाह, पर हमको तब समझ नहीं आती थी इन बातों की. अब सोचते हैं वाकई यार एक चाबी वाला भी आता है सरदार जी वो भी वाहिगुरु दा but he doesn't seem to be educated at all.
It's not education is not important.
Exactly. And I'm thinking not even the spiritual quest that we have. I'm sure that he also. मुझे लगता है वो inherent है. अभी तो मुझे याद नहीं आ रही वो छोटी छोटी बातें बट बड़ी बैठे बैठे होते बड़ी बातें याद आती है कि अच्छा ये भी कहते थे अच्छा हाँ ये भी होता था कितना मतलब नजर आता है उन बातों में. शायद if I was not going through this, I still would be not evolved, not thinking like the way I'm thinking now.
Yeah. So it's all of these help. And wherever somebody is having questions, there'll be somebody to give an answer. And that answer is showing that there is an evolution of consciousness that is taking place this is a very gradual process. It has taken thousands and thousands of years to evolve from physical to prana. Even for prana energy to come into the physical, it took crores and crores and crores of years for that to happen. So how can we expect that spiritually we'll get evolved within a few hundred or a few thousand years? It's a very gradual process. And we have to just be there with the faith and with the quest and with a deep sincerity. I have to do whatever best I can do. So at least to that extent, I'm raising the level of consciousness of the universe. Each one of us has a very important role individually to play in the upgradation of consciousness of the universe. Each one of us is important, right? So it is the pure omnipotent self-awareness of the absolute. See, Brahman is already self-aware. He's aware of himself. And it is this omnipotent self-awareness of the absolute, unbound by any law. As we said, there is no law in Brahman. Unbound by any law of the relativity. And it is that self-awareness of Satchidanand that has been able to become this universe. This universe has become how? By the Satchidanand actually being aware of his own potentiality. Because he's aware of his own potentiality, that potentiality is able to manifest out of himself. So we must always remember, how did the universe come? By the self-awareness of Satchidanand within itself. The divine is free to change the law for you or for any one of us anytime that he wants. But we will still be governed by some other law. But divine himself is ruled by no law. There's a Western philosopher called Leibniz, and he called this the law of sufficient reason. That there's sufficient reason that the divine has no laws for himself, right? Now we've talked about the one, we've talked about Brahman. Let's talk about the many. See, the Isha Upanishad does not teach us a pure and exclusive monism. What is monism? Monism is a doctrine that denies the existence of duality. कोई duality है ही नहीं, according to monism. God and the universe are not two, there is only one. But the Isha Upanishad does not believe in a pure and exclusive monism. Adi Shankara denies the many, but Isha Upanishad does not deny the reality of the many. The Isha Upanishad says there is God, he became the many, he is the many, he has entered into the many, but still there are many, he has become the many. So each of the many is a unique God. You are a unique God. Within you is a unique God. He has individualized himself and become the many. The becoming or the manifestation of the cosmos is real. In consciousness, it is real. It is not at all an illusion. Because as we grow older, as we hear more and more people, we may hear people telling us that God is real because he is changeless, but this changeable universe that there is actually just a Maya, just an illusion. Later on, someday when we are doing the Isha Upanishad, we will definitely talk about Maya. What is Maya? Even today we'll talk a little about Maya. Ki Maya fir hai kya? Maya does not mean illusion. We'll talk about it later, right? There is one Brahman who has become the many. Isha Upanishad declares that the one is real, but the Isha Upanishad does not deny the reality of the many, right? And its method is to see the one in the many. And if the one is real, the many have to be real. We are not an illusion. And the Bhagavad Gita says in chapter 7, verse 19, Vasudeva Sarvam Iti Sa Mahatma Su Durlabha. One who sees the divine in all, such a sage is difficult to find, right? If the one is preeminently real, the others, obviously the many, are not unreal. It's very clear. The world is not a figment of the mind. Sri Aurobindo, in The Life Divine, says that to regard that which is transient, that which is changeable, as unreal is purely arbitrary. It's a personal whim of somebody. It is not right. It is not the correct definition of the real, right? Unity is the eternal truth of things. Diversity is only a play in the unity. There is an underlying unity, and the diversity is a play going on within the unity. The unity is not being disturbed. Just like we gave the example that there is a river and the river is flowing, but there is a bed which is stable, which is helping the river to flow. If there were no bed, the river would not be able to have a path for itself, right? Similarly, there is a oneness which is supporting the diversity, right? The substratum or the foundation of any building, right? The sense of unity. Now, what I'm telling you is going to be the subject matter of verse 8, 9, 10. 9, 10, 11. The sense of unity has therefore been termed knowledge or vidya. When we talk of vidya and avidya in verses 9, 10, 11, this is what it says, that the sense of unity has therefore been termed knowledge or vidya. And the sense of diversity is termed ignorance. It doesn't mean it is ignorance. It is just termed as ignorance by the Rishi in this particular Upanishad. And he says that if anybody goes into vidya, goes into avidya, that is ignorance alone, he goes into darkness. What is ignorance? He said that if one goes into and lives only the life of the matter, the physical life, and says, I have nothing to do with the unity. मेरे को कौन सा experience होना unity? छोड़ो. Let me enjoy life because this is what I see real. So I'm going to live the life of ignorance. He says if somebody lives only the life of ignorance, then he goes into darkness. And in verses 9, 10, 11, the Rishi says, but if someone starts believing that only the unity is real, only the changeless is real, and the rest is Maya or illusory, then he goes into a greater darkness. Yeah. The Rishi is saying it clearly in verses 9, 10, 11, that if one lives only in the consciousness of the unity being real and the multiplicity being false, illusion, Maya, then he goes into a greater darkness. And for years, I didn't understand it. And then going to many people, Shraddhalu, Rangada, Kiritankel, so many, then I understood. He explained that very clearly. They said that when you go into unity and you fix yourself in unity, you fix yourself in the real, the unchangeable, then you don't feel like going down into, see, ये सब क्या है, तो सब माया है, इसमें मेरे को क्यों पढ़ना है? All the sons and sadhus who leave the world and go into Bhaj Govindam only, then what happens? Their chances of integrating the real, the changeable and the unchangeable becomes very little. But if one is only living in this multiplicity, as only this is real, there are chances that one day he might say, he might just feel that this is enough. I've seen enough. There must be something more to it. And then he has a chance of moving to the real. Maybe this is one of the reasons the Rishi has not clarified why he has said this, right? But this is one of the reasons that people explain to me that maybe that is why the Rishi says that if you live only as if this is real and the unity is not real, then you go into darkness. But if you live only in Vidya, then you may go into a greater darkness. right?
So I was just saying that if we go into the higher, I mean, if we believe in the unity alone, then maybe it also takes out, we're not so compassionate or kind, or we don't see the oneness of things anymore.
Yeah,
Because we are detached and we are only looking at
yes,
as ourselves as a part of the higher whole and
yes,
not interacting anymore.
absolutely.
So we are in a way escaping, or would you say escaping, or would it be like, what would you term that?
It is escaping, and not only escaping, what happens is, I mean, I'll read out a poem of Sri Aurobindo if we get the time today, in which he says that the sage is saying that, you know what, I have reached the real, I have reached that which is one. And now what happens to this body and all, I don't care. And the very next minute, he starts screaming and shouting for his food. So then somebody says that, why are you screaming and shouting? You become one with the higher consciousness. And then he says, but you know what? It's not I who's shouting. It's the stomach's hungry God which is shouting, and the stomach is not real. So the unreal is shouting. I am not shouting. I become one with the real. How can that?
अहंकार नहीं हो गया फिर?
अहंकार तो है ही, है ना? But diversity, finally, we can say, is not false, except when it is divorced from the sense of its true and eternal unity. See, Brahman is equally present in all. And when people say that, it is wrong. We have talked about it, and I'm repeating it again. When we say that Brahman is equally present in all, it is a wrong statement. Why? Because Brahman is, please say it, everybody together. Brahman is fully present in all. If we say equally, then there is a equation, right? An equation means numbers. We cannot numeralize the divine. So all we can say is Brahman is fully present in Kanchan, and Brahman is fully present in Mala, and Brahman is fully present in Sumanji. Brahman is fully present everywhere.
So we can say that because Brahman is there fully in all, so the unity and the multiplicity has to be one whole, right?
Yes.
And therefore, what you just said.
Absolutely. The unity shows that that which is changeless and that which is changing is all one whole.
And therefore, one without the other will lead to that.
Yes. Okay. We can say that. We can say that.
It's a whole.
It's a whole.
Therefore, like you just said, one without the other, and this without that will lead to that.
Exactly. So
the only way to the light is when you understand and balance both.
The unity and the oneness is, and all this is a very good beginning for verses 6 and 7, because this verses 6 and 7 are all about oneness and unity. So I hope I'd be able to do it in this week. I'm going to make it happen.
If there is no Brahman, there is darkness.
If there is no Brahman, there is no cosmos. Because the cosmos, Brahman has become the cosmos. So we are not there and Brahman is not there. It is, Brahman is as much in the anthill, as in the ant rather, as he is in the human, as he is in this cup, as he is in this water. It is fully present in all. Brahman is one, not numerically, but in essence, right? So what we've said is that Brahman can neither be diminished and neither be increased. Why? Because Brahman is already there fully. So Brahman cannot be divided either, right? Somebody asked once, what is greater, the solar system or the anthill? So Sri Aurobindo said, the solar system is quantitatively greater, but the anthill is qualitatively greater. Why? Because the degree of organization in an anthill is much more than even the organization of the solar system. Can you imagine? And Brahman is fully, wholly present in both, because he's fully present everywhere, right? And it's so beautiful. You should read sometime. Maybe we should read it together. Sometime we should read Sri Aurobindo's poem, Who? It was prescribed earlier in grade 12 in ICSE. I see, sorry. And in who he says, the hand that sent Jupiter spinning through heaven spends all its cunning to fashion a curl. The same cunning that he uses to send Jupiter spinning through heaven spends the same cunning to fashion one curl of a baby. To see his oneness, his love, all-encompassing love in whatever he does. How beautiful it is.
The person who thinks this material world is the only world that I know, I don't know anything beyond that. That person, he or she is living in ignorance and darkness. This is darkness. And the greater darkness that you spoke about was the person who thinks that I am here now
In the oneness,
in the oneness,
not oneness, sorry,
in the
divinity, in the divine,
like I have reached
in the
it.
one.
Now
Yeah.
I don't care about this, and it is
Yeah.
ahankar. So
Huh.
that is the worst darkness.
It is a greater darkness, in the
greater.
words of the Rishi.
Okay, the greater darkness. So where is the balance then? How do we
The
draw that?
balance is to be able to live in the oneness
Realization.
of the unity that he is as much there as he is here. So you to be able to see him here as much as you see him there.
So
To be able
we
to
have to strike a balance again,
to be able to see him everywhere.
Yeah.
When we do verses 6 and 7, you'll understand that totally. Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanu pashyati. And in everybody you're able to see him.
यहाँ रहते हुए
यहाँ रहते हुए ही
सबको
यहाँ रहते हुए भी नहीं,
हाँ
यहाँ रहते हुए ही ये काम हो सकता है, यहीं रह करके ये काम हो सकता है, राइट? इसलिए यहाँ रहते हुए जीवन का एक एक मोमेंट कितना प्रेशियस है. Because what we will accomplish here in a day, over there we won't be able to accomplish in years and years and years after we passed on. Because we won't have the physical body to be able to accomplish this oneness, to accomplish the experience of this oneness. That we can do only while we are in the body. Right? How precious human birth is. So, the many in the universe are sometimes called parts of the universal Brahman. How parts? Because when we say parts again, it becomes numerical. We have to say parts like waves in a sea. Now the waves are parts of, I hate using the word part, but how else do I say it? A portion of the sea. And yet they are individualized. This wave says I am greater and this wave says I am smaller. But they are all part of the sea. And within the sea, similarly, he has become us and we are within him, and his perfect self has entered within us in the form of the soul. The soul is his perfect form, and this outer being is his imperfect form. He has consciously become unconscious, the outer being. But then he said this unconscious cannot become conscious without my presence, and I am fully conscious. So then he individualized himself and he planted himself into each one of us, which continues the journey from one birth to the other to the other. You won't be content in your next birth. You were not content in your last birth. Who continues the journey? That which is perfect within you. So you are that which continues, na? We are not this.
Is perishable, no? Like the body.
The body is perishable, just like we are not this cloth that we are wearing.
Exactly.
Tomorrow we may wear something else.
Yeah.
But who am I? As each object in the universe is really the whole universe in appearance, so each individual soul is all Brahman, regarding itself and the world from a center of cosmic consciousness. Each one of us, within ourselves, the soul is a center. It's a center of cosmic consciousness, right? It's a center of cosmic consciousness. And from that center, we regard the whole universe. But it's a space from which we are regarding the whole universe. Kirit uncle used to explain it. I think I have it here. Yeah, I have. Kirit uncle used to explain it like, suppose this cushion here has mirrors on it. On the whole cushion, there are chota mirrors, like a Gujarati skirt. Now, each mirror is reflecting the room. But each mirror is reflecting only that much that it can reflect from this space. But it is reflecting the room. Similarly, each one of us can be regarded as that one mirror, one center, which is seeing the whole universe, but from one particular space that we are occupying in the universe. Right? Clear? Each one of us, while we are fully Brahman, we will reflect according to the space we occupy within Brahman. Clear? Again, like the facets of a diamond. Each facet represents a full diamond, but from one angle, right? The Supreme Brahman is one, yet we cannot call him single. Single कहते ही numerical हो जाता है. Single is also a number. He cannot be numbered. Why he cannot be numbered? Because he is indivisible, right? Now we'll talk about the vision of the Brahman. What is the vision of the Brahman? So the Upanishad teaches us how to perceive Brahman in the universe and in our self-existence. We have to perceive Brahman comprehensively as both that which is stable and that which is moving within the stability. We must be able to see it as in the eternal, an immutable spirit, and we must be able to see the Brahman in the changing manifestations of the universe and the relativity. We are all relative. So we must be able to see it in the changeable, and we must be able to see Brahman in the eternal, immutable spirit, right? And as I said earlier, we have to perceive all things in space, in time, the far, the near, the immemorial past, the immediate present, the infinite future, and all the contents, all the happenings in one Brahman. In Brahman, let's not even use the one. So the past, the present, the future are all contained within Brahman, right? We have to perceive Brahman as that which exceeds, contains, and supports all individual things. Exceeds, contains, and supports all individual things as well as the universe, transcendentally of time and space and causality. Why are we calling it transcendental? Because if we say Brahman is only the universe is within time and space. Brahman cannot be contained within time and space.
So what I was thinking is that he really explains the eddy and the river again. Each one of us, individual eddies, and the river is the reality. The river being the eternal truth, eddy being us focused on our individual stories and our energy. Eddy has energy, I'm thinking about myself, but actually I am the river. I'm not aware of it most of the times because I'm not offering it enough to become one with the river. Right?
Can I just make a correction here? The eddy you're saying is me. Instead of saying that, we can say eddy is the divine who has individualized himself. Then you'll be able to place the soul in its right perspective.
Absolutely. He is the eddy, he is the river. I am in Maya, therefore I consider myself to be the eddy. Actually, I am eddy and river, which is it. So it's only him. But because I am not focused on him, therefore I consider myself to be a separate entity, which is the eddy, but actually I am the river. Now, we are going through this journey of life, and let's just take an example. Two eddies, one a self-realized one, which is aware that he is the river, and one eddy, which is considering himself to be the eddy and not connected to the river. Both of them have an accident, both break a leg, both are in the hospital. Now, the eddy, which is suffering in the hospital, who's disconnected from the river feeling, kuch bhi acha ka tang bhi tote. So he's not focused on the divinity, whereas the other person who's got the broken leg says, my God, my Lord, you, the river, could have You protected me. I could have died. I've just got a broken leg. I'll heal in 1 month. So the whole engagement seems to be that you always go to him and say it's perfect because it's him experiencing himself. It's always him experiencing himself, so you should feel you are fantastic. I mean, this is so good.
Khali tangi to tuti.
You know? So it just comes down to being always in gratitude or whatever. And then the Eddie is always in connect with the river.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Very nice. So, you'd gone, so I'll just repeat myself that we have to perceive Brahman as that which exceeds, contains, and supports all individual things as well as all the universe, transcendentally of time and space and causality. That transcendental word is very important. We cannot say that Brahman is only that which is within this universe, because this universe is still contained within time and he cannot be contained. So he has become time and space. He has entered into time and space as the imperfect, and then he entered into it as the perfect, the soul which is within each one of us. In animals, he does not enter them, he is outside them, right? But he is beyond them also, beyond the universe also, that which is transcendental, we'll be coming to it. Now, this is the transcendental, the universal, and the individual. So you've understood the three levels: transcendental, cosmic or universal, and the individual Brahman. Lord, continent, and indwelling spirit. See the three terms? Lord, who is beyond; continent, which has become the container and entered into it, and then entered into it as the perfect indwelling spirit, which is the object of all knowledge. What is the object of our knowledge? It's realization, the realization of the transcendental, the continent or the universal, and the indwelling spirit is the condition of perfection. And when the Isha Upanishad will talk of immortality in verses 9, 10, 11, and then 12, 13, 14, that is what is being immortal. Immortality, Amritam Ashnute, in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, does not mean to live forever and to have no death. No. Immortality in the Upanishads means to be living in that consciousness, which is aware of, living in the consciousness of the transcendental, the cosmic or universal, and the immanent or the indwelling spirit at the same time. Okay. Now we can ask Sarita.
Okay,
Okay.
Anjali, one you said just now that the God is not inside the animals, he is above, outside them.
So the soul in the human beings has entered into the human being when the child is being born, right?
Yeah.
But the animal, they say that the soul does not enter in. It stays outside the animal, but is individualized for the animal, but outside it. Doesn't enter into the body. That's what I've heard. We can recheck, but there'll be so many theories.
And the second thing you were saying is that the soul in each one is unique. Isn't it the same soul? How does it become unique? It's the same uniform soul in everyone.
Yeah, so we've talked about it in our, I think 5, 6, 7 years back in our talks, that the soul, Sri Aurobindo's explained it very clearly, that the soul, now we've gone into another realm, but it's important. He said that the soul, actually the spark soul, the psychic entity, spark, is the same in all, but it creates a personality which is called the psychic being, which is called in the Upanishads as the Chaitya Purusha. So the psychic being, the personality, is individualized. Your psychic being is going from one life to the other, to the other, to the other. And depending on the growth and the evolution that has happened in this life, it will carry that growth into the next life. So the psychic being the personality that you're growing from the time you were,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
that
Yeah, yeah,
is
I got it. I got it. Yeah, this
right.
psychic being is, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. Yeah.
Otherwise, you're right. The soul is one. There is actually one soul, but it is the river and the
Yeah,
the
yeah,
eddy.
Eddie,
Yeah.
thanks. Yeah, thank you.
So everybody's understood the meaning of immortal.
Same.
Beg your pardon?
It is unique yet same. That the
Mm.
soul keeps dividing itself, the soul keeps dividing itself into each being.
We must not say dividing, because when we say divide, then you reduce it. The whole Purnamada Purnamidam. The Purna, the entire God put all of himself inside you and all of himself inside Preeti ji, right? All of himself inside Anjula. So it's a Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate, right? And they say Purnamevavashishyate means after he's become all these, what is left behind is full. Nothing has been taken out of him because he's still full, right?
Actually, one doubt. But I've always wondered, and I've raised this earlier also. Why is there so much intense evil? If he's present in each one of us, we have such evil people. Why is he present in them?
He doesn't choose. He doesn't say,
He's only
"Ki,
present
ye,
in them as well.
yeah, equally present, fully."
Physically wanting us to evolve. Why is he present in evil people?
Wow, then how will they evolve? They're also part of him. He has become, because that is the variety that is within him. That is the potentiality within
Why has
him.
he created this variety of so many evil people?
He has not created, the variety was him. It is within him. It is his potentiality.
Evil is also part of.
Absolutely. He says in the 11th chapter so clearly. He says कि ये जो जुआ है ना, ये भी मैं हूँ. He says all the ill things that are happening, I am them. It's difficult. But then he hasn't said that this game is going to be easy. This game is not easy.
He's giving you the choice.
To choose.
Choose.
Yes.
This way or that.
आगे आके
That choice is there.
Can-
So everybody's got him.
No, but
But that choice is with you, that individual.
Yes.
Whether he chooses to be good,
I only him. But who's choosing?
you
We
you have to
who?
choose. You understand?
Anjali, even Angulimal had a transformation with
Yes.
the help of Buddha.
Exactly what Preeti is saying is absolutely right. And Sarita is giving the example of so many transformations that have happened.
Yeah.
Huge transformations. The example of Angulimal. He was just cutting off fingers of people who he was invading and raiding and traumatizing. And then in one day he changed. So many people who become great saints, they were what? They've changed.
Basically, the desire, what you desire. So Angulimal's desire changed because he had some understanding, something that he understood that was different. So his consciousness probably changed.
His consciousness changed. Exactly. His consciousness raised.
So with that, the desire changed.
And the desire changed into an aspiration. It didn't remain a desire anymore. It became an aspiration for the higher. Yeah. And so many such stories in our history, in our itihas. Right? So we've understood what is immortality when we do verses 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That immortality is that condition or that consciousness in which we will be when we are simultaneously aware of the transcendental, of the cosmic, and the individual. The divine who is transcendental, the divine who has become the cosmic, the cosmic imperfect, and the divine who's become the individual perfect soul, implanted, impregnated within the cosmic. When we are aware of all three simultaneously, and we look at the unity, we live in the consciousness of unity of all three simultaneously, then we have reached the state of immortality. That is immortality.
When you have a very high ego or you start thinking too much about yourself, how great you are, that also clouds your mind to take the right decision.
Oh yes, it not only clouds your mind, it also makes you take absolutely wrong decisions. And what our Vedas say sin. What is sin? Sin is exactly that. Sin is duritani. So having ego and working from our ego, it takes us away from the divine. That is sin. दुरीतानी, which takes us, जो हमको दूर ले जाता है ईश्वर से, ईश्वर के मार्ग से, वही sin है. Ego takes us and desire takes us. These are the two things that take us away from the divine.
But as I said before, ego means edging God out.
Oh, how nice. How beautiful is this? This I've heard for the first time. Please bring it in front so we hear it from Auntie.
So ego really means like ego, edging God out.
Very nice. Very nice. Ego is edging God out.
Edging God out.
Very nice.
Okay, one question, like in the stages in a spiritual life, the Advaitic realization, is it a necessary step that before realizing the oneness?
See, Advait will take us to the experience of oneness, right? But
So is it a necessary step before we come back to the multiplicity and realize this is all
it will happen automatically when you're reading the Isha Upanishad or you're understanding Gita the way it has been explained by Sri Aurobindo, not with Maya, but with understanding that the divine is as much the stable as he is that which is changing. It will come by itself, right?
So it's not a stage where you reach and then you realize that everything is gone.
No, you're already understanding that. So the Upanishads teach us how to perceive Brahman in the universe and in our self-existence. And there are inflexible laws governing the universe. We all know that. They are inflexible. The law is being set. Ultimately, the will of the divine is the final explanation for what appears as inflexible laws. That is why what does the Gita tell us as the bottom line of the Gita? Man mana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru. Man mana, whatever you are thinking, offer it to me. Man mana bhava mad bhakto. Whatever your emotion is, your love, offer that love to me. Love me. Madhyaji mam namaskuru. What is Madhyaji? In this life, which is like a yagya, you do the yagya, you samarpit karo to me. What do you samarpit karo to me? Everything that you are doing. So in everything you offer to me, your emotion you offer to me, your ideas you offer to me, your egos you offer to me, your desires you offer to me, and you keep connecting with me whatever you are doing, and with what aspiration? The aspiration is so that thy will may be done through me. So what are we trying to do? We are trying to connect to the divine's will. Ultimately, the will of the divine is the final explanation for what appears as inflexible laws. When we understand his will, then these laws which we see as inflexible, we are able to understand them. Let's look at hydrogen and oxygen. If you see hydrogen separately and you see oxygen separately, can you tell that two atoms of hydrogen and one atom of oxygen put together will turn into some third thing called water? अब इसका कोई scientific explanation तो अभी तक किसी ने दिया नहीं है. Who ordained this? Science only tells us that the how of it, but science doesn't tell us the why of it, right? Stephen Hawking, who became an extraordinarily famous, he became extraordinarily famous because despite his physical disability, he was able to work on theoretical physics, right? He had a collaborator, Roger Penrose, who in a book, he said that science has almost fully explained the how of the universe. How of the universe he's explained. But why? Science doesn't. Roger Penrose has said this. Why has he not been able to explain? What is the why? The why has two parts. Why has two parts? The first part is, why did he become the world? Why? क्या reason था? And the second part of why is that the laws that God created for the manifestation of the universe, they are binding on us. They're not binding on him, right? Because he has fixed them. He can change them anytime he wants. And as I said earlier, Leibniz had called this the law of sufficient reason, that only the will of God is the final explanation for all the processes of the universe. He is the ordainer. Yatha tathya torthan shashvatibhya samabhya. Mane, he said it, this is the eighth verse when we do the eighth verse, that the self-existent God, self-existent we can call him, he has ordered objects perfectly according to their nature. And from when did he order it? From years sempiternal. तब उन्होंने order किया and it's going to continue like that. He has ordered it. So what can we do now for that? The only thing that we can do is keep trying to connect to his will through everything that we are doing. Through our thought, through our emotions, through our will, through our actions. We keep offering and we keep connecting and we keep inviting his will. Let thy will be done, comma, not mine. Let thy will be done, not mine. So you keep inviting his will, keep inviting. That's the only secret to reach his will. And then we had said, you were not there then, that in the center is Surya Savitri or his will. And there are 4 gods. You can give her all the the 4 gods are Varuna, when you become vast. Then there is Mitra, friendship. Varuna and Mitra go together because you cannot become vast without being friendly. You cannot be friendly without becoming vast. Varuna, Mitra, Aryaman. Aryaman is a god of intense hard work, labor, tapasya. And then Bhaga. Bhaga is the god of enjoyment. Must be able to enjoy. And when you're able to please these 4 gods, become these 4 gods, then you enter into Surya Savitri. Surya Savitri is where the will of God rests.
A point that is important in our life is to say accepting his will also.
Absolutely.
I think that's important for ourselves.
Yes.
Also accept it.
In the beginning, it can be a tamasic acceptance. कि भाई अब हम तो कुछ कर नहीं सकते हैं, जो है सो है, जो ये होना है वो यही होगा. So then it's a tamasic acceptance. But sooner or later, by going on accepting, one day one reaches the point that you accept his will with gladness, with joy, as a gift from him. So that is where we have to reach.
That's the way to survive.
Again, when we say that to survive, I have to accept. No,
Yes.
because I love him.
Yes.
Whatever he gives to me is a prasad. And that Sri Aurobindo is called to be able to live in the consciousness,
Yes.
Which is called prasada consciousness. Everything is coming as a prasada,
Yes.
right?
Good or bad, whatever comes.
Good, bad, ugly. Yeah. So we're just repeating ourselves. Brahman becomes each individual and enters into various relations with itself in the play. He is entered into you, now he's entering into a relationship with me, with Taposh, with your baby. He's entering into so many relationships with himself only. That is his Leela, that is his play. In essence, in being, each individual is all Brahman, right? In becoming, we are all imperfect individualizations of the perfect Brahman. So the outer being is the imperfect Brahman, and the inmost being, the spark, the soul, is the perfect Brahman, right? And actually it is via that, Tattvamasi, Aham Brahmasmi, right? A crystallization of our individuality. Why was it important? Can anybody tell me why was it important that a crystallization of who I am was important? The crystallization was important in the initial stages of evolution so that we would not lose ourselves in the multiplicity. अगर हम हमेशा यूनिवर्सलिटी में रहते तो हम अपने इंडिविजुअलिटी को समझ ही नहीं सकते थे. बट अपना इंडिविजुअलिटी समझना जरूरी था, इसलिए ईगो एट दैट पॉइंट वाज इंपॉर्टेंट. द ईगो वाज टेलिंग अस this is me, but the same ego, when it started leading us to a separativeness, I am, then it became an obstacle in the process of evolution. That is why Sri Aurobindo says, ego is the helper, ego is the bar. Initially, ego is the helper, because ego helps us to understand, ये मैं हूँ, इस मैं को, outer imperfection को मुझे change करना है. But जब मैं ऐसी हूँ, तो फिर वही ego becomes a bar in the process of evolution.
Like Ravan.
Again, Sri Aurobindo said, reason is the helper, reason is the bar. When we go too deeply into the reasoning, ek to reason is very helpful because it helps the mind to get clarity. But if we go on and on and on, baal ki khal, then the same reason becomes a bar, right? So now let us see the different religions that we have and how are they placing the individual with the one, right? We may regard ourselves as eternally different from the one. And this happens in Christianity and in Islam, the Semitic religions. Say Allah, Christ is different. I am different. I cannot contact God directly. So I have to go to the Son of God. I have to go to Christ to be able to send my message to God. And I am eternally different from him. Adi Shankara. What did Adi Shankara say? He said that there is only one. We are one with the divine because there is only one. What does Vishishta Advait, Ramanujacharya, say? Ramanujacharya says his philosophy is called Vishishta Advait. It is Advait, but Vishishta means it is slightly different. And what is the difference is that we are eternally one with the divine because we can all see that. And yet we are different. Right? So Sri Aurobindo's philosophy is closest to Ramanujacharya's philosophy. Right? Or there is another thing where we say that हम ईश्वर में बाद में लय हो जाना चाहते हैं, or to become one with him. That's different. But we can never regard ourselves as independent of this unity. We can never be independent of this unity because I'm part and parcel of this unity, right? Because such a view would not correspond to any conceivable truth. There's no truth in it, in the universe or beyond it, right? Diversity by itself. If you look at this diversity by itself, can you understand it? There is no explanation to it. It is not self-explanatory. Only with the help of unity, we are able to understand this universe. Of all relations, oneness is the secret base. Multiplicity is not the secret base. Oneness is the secret base on which the multiplicity rests. Therefore, we must try to conceive the oneness as ourself and the essential nature of the divine being and multiplicity as a representation of that self, right? As a becoming, that self has become the multiplicity. It is a becoming of the Lord, not a creation. So creation may the creator becomes different from the creation, right? When we want to describe the reality, then we give the three statuses: transcendentally, cosmic, and individual. We've talked about it. Brahman is all that is and all that has become. All that becomes Maya. Now we're going to try and understand the word Maya. What is Maya? Maya is that comprehensive and creative knowledge of Brahman. By that by which Brahman becomes this universe. Because what has he become? He's become other than himself. Annasya chittam abhisancharenyam utaditam vinashyati. There is in the Vedas, there is a dialogue between Indra and Agastya. This is the first verse. Kirit uncle used to really recite it a lot. Annasya chittam abhisancharenyam. He who is perfect, Annasya Chittam. He becomes other than himself. Annasya Chittam Abhisancharenyam. And he becomes that something that is other than himself. Then he enters into it. And when we, with our imperfect knowledge, try to understand it, disappears. Every time you try to deal with this and say, I want to experience it, and then we feel it's gone, or some other thought has entered into the mind. He is that inconceivable, yet somebody who we should go on pursuing to experience, right? So, what is Maya? Maya is the power of self-differentiation of Brahman. How Brahman becomes other than himself, that is by the power of Maya. He has not become an illusion. He has not become something that is not. He has become other than himself. And that is the power of Maya by which he becomes other than himself. That is Maya, right? By virtue of which he acquires three statuses. I'm repeating myself. What are the three statuses? Somebody like to tell me? I'll give a hint. Transcendental, cosmic or universal, and individual, right? And Maya is that process by which the perfect Brahman veils himself and becomes other than himself. But when he's become other than himself, who has become other than himself? The perfect. So that means the other than himself, which is the imperfect self that we are, has what potentiality? To become perfect again. God became man. Why? So that man may become God. But he cannot become God without the help of the presence of the perfect who's sitting right there within us. Right? Now, this we talked about the transcendental, because the transcendental has become that. What is the Purusha? Because there are many words that are used. So there is Purusha, Ishvara, and Brahman. So Brahman has become all this. What is Purusha? Because you'll come across these words when you read the Upanishads. Right? Brahman is that which has become all this. Now, what is Purusha? Yes, Poonam? Yes. Purusha is that perfect which resides within the individual being. जो हम बोले हमारे अंदर perfect बैठा है. Purusha is that passive consciousness or the individualized soul, right? And what is Prakriti? Prakriti is everything besides Purusha. Prakriti and Purusha we use together, the words. Purusha is what? The individualized soul. And Prakriti is what? Prakriti is everything other than Purusha. जो कुछ भी यहाँ moving है, changing है, वो सब प्रकृति है. Got it? And Brahman के साथ the word that is used is Maya. Brahman and Maya. Brahman is all that has become, and he has used the power of Maya to become other than himself. Brahman, Maya, Purusha, Prakriti, and then Ishvara, Shakti. Ishwar is the Lord of all this. He is the transcendental. Abhi tak we've talked about cosmos and the individual. Brahman became the cosmos. Transcendental is the Ishvara who is beyond all this. And with the help of his Shakti, he rules over this all that he has become. Okay? So, that paper that I gave you, but I can just tell you that what are the functions? He is all pervading. Everything within him. जैसे कोई he's छाया हुआ, he's become everything. Then he's all permeating. He is everything, and within that he has entered into it. Risa hua, like chashni in a jalebi, right? And he is self-modifying. He is everything because he has become all. So these are the three. And there's a very beautiful quote of the mother, where the mother has said, there is only him. There is nothing but him. He alone exists. There is no existence without him. There is only him. If we had more time, even we read the words of the mother, we would just meditate for a minute. Should we do that for a moment? There is only him. There is nothing but him. He alone exists. There is no existence without him. There is only him. don't want to come out of it. Nobody wants to come out of it, but time. So now let us understand Sat, Chit Shakti, and Anand. We use the word Satchidanand for God. Satchidanand, if we break up, is Sat, Chit Shakti, Ananda. Right? Sat is the topmost. What is Sat? Sat is that stability. Sat is called existence. The self-existent, that which is. How many words there are? That which is stable, that stability. And that stability, Sat, is the divine counterpart of this physical substance. Right? Sat is the divine counterpart of this physical substance. We are all physical substance. This is all physical substance. All this is physical substance. Sat is the divine counterpart of this stability. Sat is the stable aspect of the divine. It is this Sat which gives a semblance of stability. It looks like this is stable, but actually it gives a semblance of stability for Prakriti, because Prakriti is all the time engaging in motion. As we said, there is a nucleus and the electrons and protons and are all moving around it. So the stability of Purusha, God, Spirit, is derived from the Sat aspect of Satchidananda. Okay? The stability of the physical matter, which looks like stable, is only a faint and an apparent reflection of the stability of Sat. Because within matter, there are molecules which are all the time clashing, whirling with each other. Right? But in Sat, there is an absolute stability which is living harmoniously together. Now we come to Chit. We should never call it Chit alone. We should always call it Chit Shakti. So Chit Shakti, by its power of active consciousness, becomes nature, becomes Prakriti. We talked of Purusha and Prakriti. Force or Shakti, the world principle or Maya. What becomes that? Chit Shakti. Because that is the consciousness, the force. The essence of this manifested world, this essence of this whole manifestation is what? It is the play of Sat, stability, and Chit, movement. Sat, stability, Chit, Shakti, movement. And the play of these two together is what manifests, becomes this universe. Right? Chit Shakti is the divine counterpart of the vital energy. The vital energy, the prana in the physical universe, which is the hampered prana rather in the vital plane. What is it hampered by? The prana, the movement is hampered by the resistance of the gross matter. There is always resistance, no? The matter doesn't want the prana, but the prana has to enter into it to raise it to the next level of consciousness. So, Chit Shakti is the divine counterpart of the prana or the vital energy in the universe. Okay? So, we've understood Sat is the divine counterpart of this, whatever stability we can see in the matter. Chit Shakti is the divine counterpart of the hampered prana in the vital plane. And in the upper hemisphere, Sat and Chit are in perfect harmony. Their lower counterparts, matter and life energy, they are always at loggerheads because of the resistance of matter to allow energy to manifest itself within it. Matter is always resisting the governance of life. Let's give a very simple, stupid example. In the morning, when we have to get up to do our exercise, what is the resistance? The resistance is from the physical, which says, nahi utna hai. Inertia. That is the nature of matter. The matter says, nahi utna hai. But energy says, nahi uto. You have to move, you have to walk. You have to do some training. Right? And what is Maya? Maya is the comprehensive consciousness of Brahman, by which it can see all the possibilities within itself. And by its creative consciousness, it selects and then manifests that which it selects. Maya can also be seen as the eternal's wisdom. Definition down for us later. Okay. So can you just mark it and then we'll send it on the group. This para, I don't think I put it in your Maya. What is Maya? Dekho, Maya is the comprehensive consciousness. Okay? So we have to just send up to wisdom, from Maya to wisdom. You found it? Later, Maya was taken in the illusory sense to explain the distortions and the anomalies that we see in this universe, in this manifested world. Its transitoriness, because we started seeing it transitory, we started taking resort to the understanding that Maya is illusion. All this is illusion, instead of attributing it all to the divine himself. Similarly, when we talk about the cruelty in the world, you see, ये तो ईश्वर नहीं हो सकता है. ये तो God cannot do. But God has all the possibilities within himself. This was also a possibility. So he allows all this because it's a slow churning. The churning is very gradual, right? The word Maya rarely occurs in the Upanishads. Rarely. But when it does, Sri Aurobindo says that it refers to the first sense of the word, that is wisdom or comprehensive and creative consciousness of Brahman. Or we can say Maya is the process by which the transcendent used to veil himself. It's the process. Veil himself, not make himself an illusion. So we've talked about Sat, we've talked about Chit Shakti. Now we'll talk about Ananda. What is Ananda? The plane of Sat, Chit, Anand, Satchidanand. Ananda is beatitude. What is beatitude? Supreme blessedness, complete blessedness, the bliss of pure conscious existence and energy. जब सत और चित होते हैं, सत and चित शक्ति, and when they both meet together, there is Ananda, right? Sat, Chit, Anand, Satchidanand. And this is opposed to the life of matter and emotions, sensations in our life. And we are all at the mercy of outward touches of life, outward touches of matter, their positive and their negative reactions, joy and grief, pleasure and pain. Ananda, what is it the divine counterpart of? It is the divine counterpart of the lower emotional and sensational being. Inside us, there is a lower emotional and sensational being, which is the heart center. But Sri Aurobindo says that this heart center has two centers, one in front and one at the back. The one in front is a lower emotional and sensational being, एक मिनट में पल में खुश, पल में दुखी. That is the samne ka portion. But behind it is a psychic entity and the psychic being, which is this Ananda, Sat Chit Shakti Ananda, is the divine counterpart of the psychic entity and psychic being, which is behind, right? Which is the real soul. He says that there is one center for the heart, although it is a double center. In front, the emotional, and behind, the psychic. Now, what is the goal of this manifest? What then is the intention of Brahman in the movement of involution? We had promised to talk, what is the intention? Why did he become? What was the purpose? See, the process of involution you've understood, when the perfect becomes the imperfect. When he shrouds himself, when he veils himself, when he differentiates himself and becomes other than himself, annasya chittam abhisancharenyam. So when he becomes that is called the process of involution. He's hiding himself. What happened? He saw his own potentialities within himself. And he wanted to bring out and manifest all his possibilities, all his potentialities. Somebody can sing. It is a potentiality. Now she can choose to sing or she can choose to remain quiet. It is her potentiality. It was his potentiality that he could manifest all that he had within himself. And in that, there was negative and positive. All were potentialities. And every manifestation which expresses is a pointer to much more than itself. No, itna manifest kiya, but there is much more that he can manifest. He can't say now he's exhausted himself. Never exhausts himself. Right? And the Vaishnava concept of this manifestation is that this world is all gopis. And he, Brahman, is Krishna. And he wants to express love for himself. He wants to experience love from the gopis. But they are also him. But he wants to be loved. So he loves himself in all the forms, and he wants all the forms to love him because they will be loving themselves. Right? Clear? There is a poem, Ahana, by Sri Aurobindo. And it's very beautiful. Because people say, Kyon? Why did he have to become all this? Aapne pucha tha. So in that poem in Ahana, Sri Aurobindo says, heaven needed earth's touch to quiver its peace into rapture. So beautiful. Heaven needed earth's touch to quiver its peace into rapture. That peace cannot experience rapture, right? Cannot experience that joy, that intense joy, until it's quivered. And that quivering happened by heaven becoming earth.
Actually, all the emotions are also experienced only in this plane to the maximum, or do we think them in the other planes also?
In the other planes, it is only bliss. So heaven needed earth's touch to quiver its peace into rapture. So beautiful. I've given it in your references. And then another line from Ahana. Still are the rivers of peace. Still are the rivers of peace, but their banks are leafless and lonely. Still are the rivers of peace, but their banks are leafless and lonely. So the Supreme wanted to become many because he wanted to experience the joy of progress. Progress from a veiled consciousness to the joy of progressively becoming conscious of its own reality. And in the becoming, can you imagine the joy that you will experience? We will experience, all of us will experience, when we start experiencing him in everybody. The joy of that progress, he wanted us to experience that joy. He wanted the becoming, us all, the many, to become conscious of the reality, to become conscious of the oneness, to become conscious of the reality of the multiplicity. Right? He wanted the many to enjoy the ananda of self-realization, of realizing कि मैं कौन हूँ, मैं वो हूँ. अगर मैं वो हूँ तो मैं वो आनंद क्यों नहीं एक्सपीरियंस कर रही हूँ, right? And therefore he became many. There was no ulterior motive. अपने लिए उनको कुछ नहीं चाहिए था. There was no ulterior motive. The purpose is a progressive self-unfolding or self-transcendence by the many and their flowering into their own true nature. So the being or God himself would be gradually self-revealed within his own becomings. He has to be revealed within us because he's sitting within us. But इतने veils, इतने पर्दे डले हुए हैं, सब पर्दों को हटाना और उनको फिर realize करना और फिर उस realization में the ananda that we will experience, it is to give us that ananda that he became the many. Right? The goal of everything in this universe is to realize the Brahman. The first step of self-transcendence is coming out of the illusion of separativeness and realizing the underlying unity and the oneness of being and this becoming. Right? The first step of self-transcendence. हमें अपने आप को transcend करना है. कैसे? It come out of the illusion of separation, and realize the underlying unity and the oneness of being. Being is him, and becoming is him becoming the imperfect. To realize the oneness of both, that is the first step of self-transcendence. Basically, the aim of involution is, who will tell me? Starts with E, the opposite. Exactly. Basically, the aim of involution is evolution and then experiencing Ananda. And what is Ananda? Ananda is the seed of all manifestation. The ultimate goal of divine manifestation seems to be to pour on us the experience of Ananda. That seems to be the ultimate goal. Sri Aurobindo writes in the Life Divine, states, I'm quoting, states of consciousness there are. This is a very beautiful statement. States of consciousness there are in which pain is the violent backlash of the waters of universal delight. Aurobindo writes in the Life Divine, and I've given it in your reference papers, states of consciousness there are in which pain is the violent backlash of the waters of universal delight.
It's not there.
So there is actually only delight, but sometimes that delight gives a backlash. Looks like pain, but it's coming from delight only. Again, let me give you an example. Ganges is flowing in one direction and giving us joy. Joy of bhakti and coolness, joy of touching that holy water which has emerged from the feet of Vishnu. तो जब हम Ganges में पाँव माने घुसते हैं या उनको अपने ऊपर छिड़कते हैं तो विष्णु जी के चरण से आई है, तो हम तो विष्णु जी को छू रहे हैं ना in a way. What joy it is giving to us, right? Now the same Ganges, when it hits a boulder and backlashes, it becomes a tidal wave. And the same river Ganges, which gave us joy, can give us pain. So what can we say? Sri Aurobindo's words? States of consciousness there are in which pain is the violent backlash of the waters of universal delight. Now, this sentence,
How we look at it, actually.
how we look at it, when a pain comes to us.
Big example of that.
Gopis, when Sri Krishna goes away, they cried once, but after that, they said, no, we can't cry, because where is he not? He's always, once he met Radha, or some story comes like that, he says कि मैं तुमको हमेशा याद करता रहता हूँ, कितनी बार याद करता हूँ, तुम मुझे याद करती हो, बोले याद कैसे करूं, अगर कभी भूला हो तब तो याद करो, जो हर समय मेरे जहन में हो उसको पहले याद कैसे करूं, क्योंकि भूली नहीं कभी. So one seems pleasant, the other seems like pain, but both are emerging and are being given by the same Ganges. So the joys that we receive in this world are the same as a pain that we receive, because it's coming from the same source, right? Ananda is the divine counterpart of also the lower emotional and sensational being. Ananda is also the divine counterpart of the psychic being. So pain and Ananda both are a gift of the divine. In fact, the Taittiriya Upanishad says, we are born of Ananda, we live in Ananda, and we die in Ananda. If this were not true, we could not live even for a moment. Even if there was not bliss, we would not be able to live even for a moment. Right? And Sri Aurobindo is given the 3 E's, which I often used to quote. Endurance, equanimity, ecstasy. Right? In the beginning, we have to endure and endure and endure and endure. Endurance. That continuous endurance leads to equanimity. And equality comes in our being, and equanimity comes in our being, in which we live in whatever may be happening, we are equal in every situation. When we reach equanimity, it will finally lead us to the experience of ecstasy, right? Spiritual Ananda's main feature is that it is self-existent. It's not something that we derive from outside. It's a outflowering of the being. The becoming is outflowering, and the being is being exposed from within. And it is self-existent. We're not getting that joy, that delight from anything outside. It's from within that joy is being experienced, right? In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Aurobindo says, Sri Krishna says, and Sri Aurobindo has translated this Sanskrit verse. I've given it in your reference. The Blessed Lord said, when the soul is no longer attached to the touches of outward things, then one finds the happiness that exists in the self. Such a person, such a one, enjoys an imperishable happiness because his self is in yoga. Yoga means joined, yukt, join. Yoga comes from the word yuj. By yoga, he's joined by yoga with the Brahman. So his joy is self-existent within himself. It's not dependent on anything outside.
So I said, in death, when we lose somebody, we realize that there is a part of us which grieves for a while, but then we come back to that
Yes.
state of equanimity or happiness, or we continue to live.
Yes.
Nothing really intrinsically changes within
Yes.
us. It's a short period of
Absolutely. Absolutely. उसको भी कुछ कहते हैं ना, शमशान वैराग्य.
yes.
कुछ दिन के लिए होता है, then you come back to our life. So in contrast to our ordinary human joys, which depend on objects and events external to ourselves, spiritual happiness is not based on Ichha Purti or satisfaction of desires. Ananda is the bliss of pure conscious existence and energy, in contrast to our happiness, which depends on objects. So we have understood what is immortality or Amritam. This higher existence, Satchidanand, is unified. It is self-existent. Sat, Chit Shakti, and Ananda. They're self-existent, not confused by the figures of birth and death. It is called, therefore, Amritam. Amritam is Satchidanand. Immortality is offered to us as the goal to be aimed at and the happiness that we have to enjoy when we have transcended the state of death. Right? Transcending the state of death is not transcending death. Transcending the state of death, that we understanding that I am actually that which is within me, that which is immortal. When I understand that, when I live in that consciousness, I have transcended the state of death, right? In other words, once we have discovered and realized the immortal self within us, when we are rooted in the immortal self within us, when all our actions proceed from the soul within, not from the mind, not from our emotional level, not from the physical level, it is called a state of immortality, Amritam Ashnute. And this is the goal offered to us and aimed at, and then this felicity can be enjoyed. Then Ananda, that supreme beatitude, blessedness, can be enjoyed by us. Our concept of progress, unfortunately, is linear. But the divine's plan is always an infinite going down, coming up, going down, coming up. But realize every time we go down, when we come up, we go to a level which is higher. Then we come down and we feel, what have I become? How can I behave like this? But then when we realize, when we go up, we go to a stage that is higher than that. So it is cyclical. The progression is cyclical in the divine's eyes, right? And whatever is happening is part of an ultimate good, which is the equivalent of right arrangement. Yatha tatthitordhan. That is the greatness and the courage of Vedanta, which asserts that everything is part of the divine plan. The problem becomes that when we say that it's all part of the divine plan, so why should I take any action? Well, I don't know the divine plan. Since I do not know the divine plan, I have to make a choice. And if I do not make the choice from my highest being, there will be a fall. So that once we choose, we made a choice, then what happens to us is ordained. But that choice is still a free will. We have to make that choice. It's a complex working out, which ordains things and events in accordance to the prevailing nature. The mother has said it very beautifully. was I used to ask Kirit uncle this question very often. Ki, whatever has happened, what has happened? What part did I have in that? And he said, the mother has said that whatever happened had to happen in accordance to the prevailing circumstances. जो उस समय circumstances हैं, उस समय हमारा जो nature है, उस समय हमारी जो surroundings का nature है, वो circumstance बन गया है. उस circumstance के हिसाब से जो circumstance निकलेगा, वो तो had to happen, right?
But what about your attuning to the divine will then?
So that is what.
How do the both synchronize?
Now something has happened. Now that circumstance has happened. It has happened because of whatever our nature was at that time.
Right.
And whatever was the circumstance around us. Something has happened. Now after that, how we behave. Do we take it as a prasada
Yeah.
from the divine?
Okay.
Then how we deal with it. Do we take it as a prasada? After we take it as a prasada, what we do, are we offering it back to him? Are we inviting him into it and saying, up, let thy will be done, not mine? When all this takes part, then we become closer and closer, the divine will happening through us. We cannot sit back saying that the divine will is already there, it is already planned, all is ordained. We do not know what the divine will is. So we have to make a choice, right? And inviting him into our actions and do our actions with as much skill and perfection that we are capable of at that time. And finally, after doing that, to accept the result, whatever it may be, good, bad, ugly, we have to accept the result as his gift, whether it is a BMW or it's an Alto. Coming back to the same. उसके बाद जो हुआ वो उसकी चॉइस, हमने जो चूज किया वो हमारी चॉइस, रिजल्ट क्या आया वो उसकी चॉइस.
So we are making the choice, we are choosing, but shouldn't that be his will too? I mean, I know he's left it to us because of what you explained earlier, but isn't that preordained as well?
It actually is, but we don't know what is preordained. We don't know. And we think about it as it is preordained. So I will just sit back and sleep a little more. I won't do exercise. It's preordained. Then you're not rising to your highest. And what will happen after that? That the body will become unhealthy. It'll become lazy. All that will go on happening because I thought that it is preordained. So on the face of it, we've been given a choice.
कभी कोई इस ऐसे मोड़ पे इंसान आता है कि उसको पता ही नहीं लगता रास्ता कौन सा चूज करना है, ये ठीक है कि वो ठीक है, क्या करूं, किधर जाऊं, ये गलत है, समझ ही नहीं आती है.
वो समझ नहीं आती है, बट तब जब हम ईश्वर को बुलाते हैं
हाँ.
और हम बोलते हैं आप हमारे लिए चूज
हाँ,
करें,
और फिर हम उनको बोलते हैं बी सरेंडर, फिर जो भी हम डिसीजन लेते हैं हम उनको ऑफर करते हैं.
हाँ, इवन द सर्वाइवल is his decision. Survive होना है कि नहीं होना है. But at that time, to make the choice by offering, to be in that state of offering is what is important.
Maybe sometimes to reach a goal, you have to go through all that to understand that where you have to reach.
Yes.
Ultimately, to have a play,
Please,
you have to be interactive.
1 minute.
How can you be inert then?
One
When
minute.
there is no play. I mean, because it is the whole thing is a play.
Hmm.
You have to be interactive. So
Absolutely.
You have to make the choice.
Yes.
If you are inert, they are going back to the state of matter.
Absolutely. So well said.
You have
You are
to
choosing to
Yes.
evolve rather than evolve.
Because we are saying कि भाई वो तो सब preordained है,
Exactly.
तो why should I make a
He
choice?
wants us
But
to
he
play.
wants us to rise. He wants us to evolve. To evolve, we have to make the right choice, right? And what choice we make will forge out the path after that.
And to realize that we are limitless like him also, na?
Yes.
So that we're not hemmed in by fear or by, which are the things which normally happen when we don't want to make a decision. We're nervous about it either through fear
Huh.
or any other reason. We limit ourselves. So
Yes,
to actually take that step forward is also a part of our evolution.
absolutely.
We are
Absolutely.
overcoming and we are rising higher
Yeah.
with each decision.
Yeah, it's an outflowering,
Yeah.
outflowering, outflowering. That's what the whole thing is, the whole life is about that. Unfoldment. More we are able to achieve in this life, in our next life, we'll be born with those capacities. We'll start from there. How can we waste the time here? Right? So beautiful. I'll just tell a story which I think you all know, but we'll just repeat it. It's a story about a sadhak who had heard from his guru so much about everything is Brahman, everywhere there is Brahman. He said everywhere, and he said, I'm living in that experience. He was walking on the road and thought about Brahman. He was living in Brahman. And then in front of him came an elephant with a mahout on top. And the mahout kept saying, Ki move from the road. The elephant will swat you away, move. He says, no, the elephant too is Brahman. I am Brahman, nothing will happen. And he kept moving, and the mahout kept saying, move, move. He said, no, the elephant is also Brahman. I'm living in that consciousness. And the elephant with his trunk gave him one swat, fell to the other side of the road. And after he could revive back, he went back to his guru. And he said, ये क्या हुआ? आपने बोला था everything is Brahman. But Brahman didn't even look at me. Just swatted me away. I got so badly hurt. My bones are broken. So you know what his guru said? He said, you saw the Brahman in the elephant. You didn't see the Brahman in the mouth. The mouth was continuously telling you to move. That too was Brahman. You can't see Brahman according to your choice. So, this is the presence of Brahman. Yeah.
That's your choice, right? You saw what you wanted to do.
Yeah, you cannot do that kind of choosing, no? You have to see Brahman everywhere. So we'll end with this today, and we'll do a minute or two of silence and gratitude to the divine for giving us this beautiful. I'm very grateful to all of you, because by your being here, I am able to articulate something. And when I articulate something, it becomes more me. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.